Randolph Scott, one of old Hollywood's most iconic leading men, carried one of the biggest. He knew who was hiding in plain sight. But why did he name them? And what did it cost? Join us as we explore the quiet truth behind the headlines and the names that were never meant to be spoken. Southern Roots. Randolph Scott was born on January 23, 1898 in Orange County, Virginia. However, he didn't spend most of his childhood there. His family moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, where he grew up and spent his early years. His father, George Grant Scott, worked as a certified public accountant. His mother, Lucille Crane Scott, focused on keeping the family home running smoothly and made sure her children followed the rules and acted with kindness and politeness. As a young man, Scott enjoyed sports and outdoor activities. He had a strong athletic build and was active in many physical activities throughout school. He also had a curious mind and liked to learn. After finishing high school, he first attended the Georgia Institute of Technology, commonly known as Georgia Tech. Later, he transferred to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It was during his time in college that he discovered something that would change the course of his life: acting. While in school, Scott started to explore drama and theater. It began as a simple interest, but it quickly turned into a serious passion. Acting gave him a way to express himself in ways he hadn't tried before. It was something different from the sports and studies he was used to. The stage gave him a sense of purpose and direction. When World War I broke out, Scott, like many young men of his generation, felt a duty to serve. He joined the military and was sent overseas to France. There he served as an artillery observer, a job that was both physically demanding and mentally intense. His role involved watching enemy movements and helping to direct artillery fire, which meant he had to stay focused even when under pressure or in danger. After returning from the war and finishing his education, Scott decided to move to Los Angeles in the late 1920s. At the time, Hollywood was quickly becoming the center of the movie world. Like many others, Scott was drawn to the opportunities the film industry promised. He didn't arrive in Hollywood with fame, wealth, or a big break waiting for him. What helped him get started was a connection through his father. His family knew the famous director and businessman Howard Hughes, and Hughes gave him one of his first chances in film. At first, Scott only got small roles in silent films, but he had something that directors liked: a tall, strong frame, a sharp jawline, and a calm, confident presence. These qualities made him stand out even when his roles were minor. He appeared in early films like The Far Call and The Virginian in 1929. These roles weren't big, but they were enough to get him noticed. Throughout the early 1930s, he kept working in different kinds of movies: romantic stories, comedies, and crime dramas. He didn't become an instant star, but he worked hard and kept improving. His big break came in the mid-1930s when he started to take on more serious roles. In The Last of the Mohicans, he showed that he could lead a film with quiet strength and emotion. Then came Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, where audiences began to truly see his charm and calm style. He was finally on his way to becoming a well-known actor. A Controlled Private Life. Randolph Scott was one of the most well-known stars in Hollywood, but when it came to his personal life, he was quiet and private. He wasn't the kind of actor who liked to be in the gossip columns or party scenes. Still, like many actors of his time, his relationships and family life were carefully watched by the public and the movie studios. Scott's first marriage was to Marion DuPont in 1936. She came from a very wealthy and famous family, the DuPonts, who made their fortune in the chemical industry. Marion was deeply involved in horse racing and preferred a life on the East Coast. Scott, on the other hand, was focused on his acting career in Los Angeles. The two led very different lives, and the marriage didn't last. They had no children, and after just 3 years, they quietly divorced in 1939. His second marriage, however, was very different. In 1944, Scott married Patricia Stillman, an actress and socialite. This marriage lasted over 40 years until Scott's death in 1987. Together, they adopted 2 children, Sandra and Christopher. Unlike many Hollywood families, they lived quietly in Beverly Hills, away from the drama and attention of the film world. Scott kept his family life private. He wasn't flashy or showy, and he rarely gave interviews about his home life. Friends described him as a loving husband and a kind father. He enjoyed spending time at home and avoided the fast Hollywood lifestyle. Even though he was a big star, Scott chose to keep things simple and peaceful at home. During Randolph Scott's time in Hollywood, the studios had full control over their actors. Big studios like Warner Bros., Paramount, and RKO signed actors to long-term contracts. These contracts didn't just cover work in films. They also controlled how actors behaved in public, what they wore, who they dated, and even what they said in interviews. Stars were expected to maintain a certain image at all times, on and off the screen. Public relations teams worked hard to make sure the stars looked perfect to the public. If there were rumors about an actor's private life that the studio didn't like, those rumors were quickly silenced or redirected. Studios often staged relationships or marriages to make a star seem more appealing or to protect their public image. These arrangements, often called lavender marriages, were sometimes used to hide the fact that an actor was gay, especially at a time when homosexuality was not accepted publicly. Randolph Scott knew how to stay under the radar. He followed the rules of the studio system and rarely made waves. For many years, there were rumors and quiet talk about his long friendship and living arrangement with fellow actor Carrie Grant. The two shared a beach house for many years and were close companions, which led to speculation. But nothing was ever confirmed, and both men avoided discussing it. The studios worked hard to keep such topics out of the press. Scott's ability to avoid scandal was seen as a skill. He kept things professional, and even when others were surrounded by drama, he stayed calm and respectful. He never sought attention and always acted with quiet dignity. Unlike many in Hollywood, he never joined in the gossip or treated anyone differently based on rumors or personal secrets. Later in life, Scott privately told a close friend that he believed 6 of his fellow actors had been forced to hide their in order to protect their careers. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was one of the most talented and complex actors of Hollywood's golden age. He was born in 1920 and got his start on Broadway as a teenager. By the late 1940s, he had moved into film, where his unique style quickly set him apart. Unlike many leading men of the time who were known for their toughness and confidence, Clift brought something new to the screen: vulnerability. While Clift's work on screen was brave and honest, his real life was full of struggle. In private, he was gay, something that Hollywood never allowed to be public during his lifetime. The studio system had strict rules, and being openly gay could ruin a career. So Clift had to live 2 lives, one for the public and one in secret. This constant pressure wore on him. People who knew him said he was kind, shy, and deeply sensitive. But he also lived with anxiety, loneliness, and self-doubt. He knew he could never fully be himself in public, and that pain showed up in his work. His performances felt so raw and real because, in many ways, he was drawing from his own life. He was acting out the very things he was feeling inside. Clift never made public statements about his sexuality, but those closest to him knew the truth. They also knew how hard it was for him to carry that secret in such a judgmental world. In 1956, Montgomery Clift's life took a tragic turn. After leaving a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's house, he crashed his car into a telephone pole. The accident was serious. His face was badly injured and he had to undergo several surgeries. Though he returned to acting, he was never the same. The crash left him in constant pain, and he began to rely on alcohol and pills to get through each day. His emotional struggles grew worse, and his health declined. Still, he continued to act, giving powerful performances despite his personal suffering. Clift died in 1966 at the age of 45. The official cause was a heart attack, but many believe years of emotional pain and addiction had taken a heavy toll. His death was seen as a symbol of the damage that Hollywood's harsh system could do to a sensitive soul. He remains one of the most tragic and respected figures in film history, a man who brought truth to the screen while hiding so much of his own. Cesar Romero. Cesar Romero had one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. He first became famous in the 1930s and 1940s, often cast as the smooth Latin lover. With his tall frame, slicked back hair, and charming smile, Romero was seen as the perfect romantic lead. He acted in dozens of films during Hollywood's golden age, playing both leading men and colorful supporting characters. However, to younger generations, Romero is best remembered for one unforgettable role, the Joker in the Batman TV series of the 1960s. His version of the Joker was loud, over-the-top, and full of mischief. It was also fun, lighthearted, and unlike any villain people had seen before. Audiences loved him for it. Over the course of his long career, Romero appeared in more than 100 films and countless television shows. He worked with major stars including Shirley Temple, Marlene Dietrich, and Frank Sinatra. He was charming, funny, and a constant presence in American entertainment for decades. But while his public career was big and bright, Romero's personal life remained mostly in the shadows. Cesar Romero never married and had no children, which led to many quiet rumors over the years. But unlike some stars who were caught up in scandals or gossip columns, Romero kept things private. He was known for his good manners, his style, and his ability to avoid controversy. In public, Romero was often seen with women. He attended red carpet events, movie premieres, and Hollywood parties with beautiful actresses by his side. But these appearances were carefully arranged. Many were set up by studio publicists. At the time, Hollywood expected leading men to appear heterosexual, no matter what their real lives looked like. The pressure to keep up appearances was intense, especially for someone like Romero, who was always in the public eye. Despite the pressure, Romero never made a big deal out of his private life. He didn't argue with reporters, but he also didn't open up. He used his charm and politeness to quietly steer away from questions. While he never publicly came out, those close to him understood the truth. He lived his life discreetly, choosing privacy over confrontation. Romero's ability to keep his personal life separate from his public image was a survival strategy. In an era when being openly gay could end a career, silence became a form of protection. For Romero, like for many others, staying silent wasn't just about personal comfort, it was about survival in an industry that could be unforgiving. The fear of losing work, fans, or reputation was very real. And yet, through it all, Romero kept working, kept smiling, and kept showing up. Scott saw that kind of quiet strength as deeply admirable. It wasn't dramatic or loud, but it was powerful. It was a reminder that sometimes the strongest people are the ones who carry the most without ever letting it show. Cesar Romero passed away in 1994 at the age of 86. He left behind a long list of performances that still entertain audiences today. But behind every joke, smile, and dramatic moment, there was a man who had to balance fame with the need for personal safety and peace. Jim Nabors. Jim Nabors rose to fame in the 1960s thanks to his role as Gomer Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show. His character was a kind-hearted, simple man from a small town who always meant well. Audiences loved him immediately. His gentle voice, wide smile, and sense of innocence made him one of the most beloved actors on television. Due to his popularity, Nabors was given his own spin-off show, Gomer Pyle USMC, which followed his character in the Marine Corps. The show ran for 5 successful seasons and made Nabors a household name. People saw him as the perfect picture of small-town goodness. Funny, friendly, and full of heart. Off-screen, Nabors was just as kind and humble. He didn't enjoy the Hollywood party scene and preferred to keep his personal life private. Fans saw him as America's sweetheart, someone who never seemed to have a bad day or a cruel word to say. What most people didn't know, however, was that Nabors had a side of his life he kept hidden for decades, one that he guarded carefully and quietly. In the 1970s, a cruel rumor began spreading that Jim Nabors and actor Rock Hudson had secretly gotten married. The story was false and meant to be a joke, but it had serious consequences. At that time, being labeled as gay in Hollywood could destroy a career, especially for someone like Nabors, whose fan base included many conservative families. The rumor became widespread, damaging both Nabors' public image and his personal life. As a result, Nabors pulled away from the public spotlight. Even more painfully, he ended his friendship with Rock Hudson, not out of anger, but out of a need to protect himself and his career. It was a heartbreaking decision, made during a time when even an untrue story could ruin everything. This period was hard for Nabors. While he didn't address the rumor directly in public, it clearly affected him. He began to focus more on his stage performances, often singing in concerts and appearing less on television. He stepped back from the world that had once loved him so loudly. While Jim Nabors kept quiet in public, he built a very different life in private. He moved to Hawaii, where he lived peacefully with his partner, Stan Cadwallader. The two were together for nearly 40 years. Away from the cameras and the gossip, they built a loving and steady life. In 2013, after same-sex marriage was legalized in Washington state, Neighbors and Cadwallader got married. Neighbors confirmed the news publicly, saying, "I'm not ashamed of people knowing. It's just that it was such a personal thing I didn't tell anybody." His words were simple, honest, and full of quiet strength. Neighbors' marriage didn't change how fans felt about him. Most people were happy for him. By then, he had already left a deep mark on American culture. His work as Gomer Pyle had brought joy to millions, and his singing career had lasted decades. The man who once feared losing everything over a rumor finally got to live his truth openly and on his own terms. To Scott, Neighbors' later years, open, honest, and peaceful, were a quiet victory. They showed that love and integrity could survive even the hardest times in Hollywood. Carrie Grant. One of the most talked-about parts of Randolph Scott's life was his close friendship with fellow Hollywood star Carrie Grant. During the 1930s and 1940s, the two men shared a beautiful beachfront home in Santa Monica. They lived together for over a decade, and the press often referred to them as roommates or bachelors. At the time, that kind of living arrangement wasn't completely unusual in Hollywood, especially for single actors. Studios even encouraged these kinds of stories since they made stars seem fun, sociable, and charming. To the public, it seemed like two successful men enjoying their Hollywood lifestyle. On screen, their personalities were different, but they had great chemistry. Scott had a calm, steady presence, while Grant was full of energy and humor. People liked seeing their different styles side by side, both in movies and in real life. What fans didn't know at the time was how much more complicated their relationship might have been. Despite how the press presented their friendship, there was always quiet talk behind the scenes. Hollywood insiders noticed that the two actors were unusually close. Even after both men got married, Scott twice and Grant 5 times, rumors continued. Their marriages never fully stopped the speculation. In fact, many believed those marriages were more about appearances than real relationships. People who worked in the film industry at the time often described the connection between Scott and Grant as more than friendship. Some considered it deeply romantic. It wasn't something that could be talked about openly, especially in that era. Hollywood studios were strict about their stars' public images, and being openly gay could destroy an actor's career. There were also many photos taken during their years together that didn't look staged or meant for publicity. These photos, often taken at their shared home or during private vacations, showed a different side of the two men. In them, Scott and Grant appeared relaxed, happy, and comfortable in each other's company. They cooked together, traveled together, and hosted friends together. The warmth between them felt real and natural, not just for show. Some historians and biographers today believe that Scott and Grant were in love, even if they could never say it publicly. Whether that's true or not, their bond was strong and lasted for many years. Randolph Scott never gave interviews that revealed anything personal about his relationship with Carrie Grant. He was private until the very end of his life. But those close to him say that he always spoke about Grant with affection. There was no bitterness or regret, only kindness in how he remembered him. As Scott got older, he opened up a little more in private conversations. One close friend later revealed that Scott included Grant among the 6 Hollywood actors he believed had to hide their true selves because of the times they lived in. This wasn't just a casual comment. It was an act of quiet remembrance. For Scott, acknowledging Grant in this way was meaningful. It was his way of honoring a deep connection that couldn't be fully shared with the world. In his final years, Scott remained quiet and reserved, but those few private reflections gave a glimpse into what might have been one of the most important relationships of his life. It's clear that whether romantic or not, Cary Grant meant a great deal to him. Rock Hudson. For much of the 1950s and 1960s, Rock Hudson was the image of the perfect American leading man. Tall, handsome, and effortlessly charming, he starred in major films like Magnificent Obsession and Pillow Talk opposite Doris Day. He was loved by audiences, especially women, who saw him as the ultimate romantic hero. But the public image they saw was carefully crafted from the beginning. Hudson was discovered and managed by Henry Wilson, a Hollywood agent known for creating stars. Wilson shaped Hudson's career from the start, changing his name, teaching him how to speak, and even training him in how to appear more masculine on screen. In truth, Rock Hudson was a gay man, and he spent his entire career trying to hide that fact. During the 1950s, Hollywood was a place where being openly gay meant losing your job, your reputation, and your future. The studios were willing to go to great lengths to keep their stars' secrets, and so was Hudson. He was pushed into a fake marriage in 1955 to his agent's secretary, Phyllis Gates. It lasted just 3 years and produced no children. Though Gates later claimed not to have known the truth at the time, the marriage was widely understood in Hollywood to be a public cover. It didn't stop the rumors, but it gave Hudson enough of a shield to keep his career going strong. Behind the scenes, Hudson had relationships with men, but he kept everything private. He never acknowledged any partners publicly, never appeared in photos with them, and avoided interviews that asked personal questions. He lived with the constant fear that his secret would be exposed. Friends and colleagues knew the truth, but they also knew to stay silent. It was the unspoken rule of the industry. Randolph Scott and Rock Hudson were never particularly close, but Scott watched Hudson's career with interest and growing sympathy. Scott knew from his own experience what it meant to live a double life, to hide who you were just to keep working. But in Hudson's case, the stakes seemed even higher. Scott admired Hudson's professionalism and dedication to his craft. He saw Hudson as someone who followed the rules of the studio system, gave the audience what they wanted, and never complained. But he also felt sadness. Everything changed in 1985. That year, Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS. It was a moment that shocked the world. Until then, AIDS had been mostly discussed in the media as a disease affecting unknown people, usually ignored or feared. But Hudson was a household name. He was beloved. And suddenly, he was the face of a crisis many people had tried to ignore. Hudson's diagnosis forced a major shift in public awareness. When he died later that year at the age of 59, it became impossible for Hollywood and the world to pretend anymore. AIDS was real. Gay people were not invisible, and the silence could no longer continue. For Randolph Scott, Hudson's final chapter was both tragic and courageous. He believed Hudson had spent his life doing what he had to do to survive, and when the truth finally came out, it helped start an honest conversation the industry had avoided for too long. Hudson didn't speak much publicly about his illness, but just by being himself in the end, he helped change things. Merv Griffin. Merv Griffin began his career with a microphone and a smooth voice. He started out as a big band singer in the 1940s, performing with Freddie Martin's orchestra. He was popular, charming, and knew how to hold an audience's attention. This early success led him into radio and eventually into television. By the 1950s and 1960s, Griffin had become a household name. He hosted The Merv Griffin Show, a talk show that ran for more than 2 decades. He interviewed everyone, from Hollywood stars to U.S. presidents, and became one of the most well-liked personalities on television. But that wasn't the full story of his career. Behind the scenes, Griffin was a smart and ambitious businessman. He had an eye for opportunity and a mind for business. In the 1960s, he created 2 game shows that would become American institutions, Jeopardy! And Wheel of Fortune. These shows were huge hits and are still on the air today. With their success, Griffin built an empire. He started his own production company, Merv Griffin Enterprises, and became one of the wealthiest men in the entertainment world. By the 1980s, he wasn't just a television host, he was a full-scale media mogul. Later, he also made major investments in hotels and casinos. In short, he moved from performing in front of the camera to running the show behind it. Throughout his long career, Merv Griffin always kept a very public smile and a very private life. Though he was surrounded by celebrity fame and rumors, he never publicly came out as gay. In interviews, when asked about his personal life or close relationships, he would either dodge the question or give vague answers. He never confirmed or denied anything directly. Over the years, various tabloids and entertainment writers hinted at his relationships with men, but Griffin never responded in depth. He kept his focus on his work, his businesses, and his reputation. His silence wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate choice. He knew that as a powerful figure in business, not just entertainment, the risks of being openly gay were much higher. For Griffin, managing his image meant protecting his empire, In the world of high-level corporate media, being openly gay could lead to lost deals, negative press, or even professional isolation. So he stayed quiet, avoided public controversy, and kept his private life off limits. Randolph Scott didn't know Merv Griffin personally, but he respected him. Scott, who had also lived a life of private balance between fame and personal truth, understood what it meant to keep secrets in a demanding industry. He saw Griffin as someone who had made his way in a world that didn't make it easy for men like them. Though their paths didn't cross closely, Scott's quiet acknowledgement of Griffin's experience showed a kind of professional respect. It also highlighted just how many powerful men in entertainment had to build entire lives in public while protecting a different truth in private. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next video.